You know, one of the great discoveries of my life was this. If you want to change your life, start by changing your morning. Not your whole week, not your whole schedule, not your entire destiny, just the first hour. Because the first hour is the hinge on which the whole day swings. And if the hinge is rusty, the door doesn't open well. But if the hinge is strong, the whole day opens with ease. For 30 years, I've told people all around the world, success doesn't start at noon. It doesn't begin when the emails flood in, when the phone starts ringing, or when the world begins calling your name. No. Success starts when your feet first touch the floor. It starts when the mind is still quiet, when the world is still sleeping, when you have a moment, just a moment, to decide who you're going to be today. See, every morning offers you a gift of direction, a gift of attitude, a gift of discipline. Each new sunrise hands you a blank page and whispers, write something good. The question is, do we write or do we rush? Do we design or do we drift? I used to drift. I really did. One morning I'd wake up motivated, the next morning defeated. Some days I started strong, some days I started scattered. And then one day I learned something that changed everything. What you do in your first hour determines what the next 23 will permit. If your morning is careless, your day becomes chaotic. But if your morning is disciplined, your day becomes obedient. It listens to you. That's why I want to take you on a little journey. 30 days, one routine. A routine simple enough to do anywhere, but powerful enough to reshape your life. A routine built from the very disciplines that changed my own path, reflection, self-education, planning, and a little movement to wake up the body. Just 4 small steps, but practiced daily, they can change your entire story. So for the next 30 days, I want you to think of yourself as an architect, not of buildings, but of mornings. And if you build your mornings well, you build your life well. I can't promise that the world will change for you in 30 days, but you will change for the world. And that, my friend, makes all the difference. Are you ready to begin? Good, because this is the morning that changes everything. Now let's talk about why the morning carries such incredible weight. You see, each day is like a suitcase, small enough to carry, big enough to hold anything you decide to put inside. And the interesting thing about a suitcase is this. If you fill it with purpose early, it stays organized. But if you fill it with confusion later, it becomes a mess. And many people, unfortunately, wake up and fill their day with a little panic, a little rushing, a little noise, and then wonder why the rest of the day doesn't cooperate. Let me give you one of the great philosophies of life. If you get a head start on the day will cooperate. If you start late, the day becomes your master. And it's hard to build anything of significance when the day is the boss and you're the employee of your own schedule. Mornings give you the chance to switch that relationship. They give you the chance to say, today, I'm in charge. But here's something people often forget. The morning doesn't begin in the morning. It begins the night before. What you read, what you think, what you decide, before you sleep, these things shape the first thoughts that greet you when you wake. So you're not just building a morning routine, you're building a rhythm, a cycle, a pattern that supports your becoming. And this is important. Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they lack direction. They wake up with no map, no compass, no sense of who they intend to be. They roll out of bed and immediately fall into a world of reaction, checking messages, checking problems, checking the noise. And if you're not careful, you can spend your whole life reacting and never creating. A designed morning solves that. A designed morning says, before the world tells me who I should be, I will decide who I am. That is power, quiet power, the kind that doesn't shout but shapes everything. Think of your morning as the steering wheel of your life. If you grab it early, you choose the direction. If you grab it late, you're already off course. And let me tell you, it's very hard to correct the course of a day once it has wandered. But it's very easy to guide the course of a day if you take the wheel before the engine starts. The morning offers something else too, something rare in our noisy modern world. Stillness. Stillness is the birthplace of clarity. When the world is quiet, your thoughts settle, your ideas breathe. Your intentions rise to the top, and if you listen closely, the morning has a way of whispering answers you couldn't hear the day before. So why do mornings matter? Because they are the daily invitation to become the person you intend to be. And here's the promise: master the morning and you master the day. Master the day and you master the year. Master the year and your whole life begins to change. Now that we understand the why, let's talk about the how, the core components of what I call a Jim Rohn morning. Now that we've talked about why mornings matter, let's break down what a truly effective morning looks like. Not a complicated morning, not a dramatic morning, not a morning filled with 30 tasks and 14 alarms. No, I'm talking about a morning built on a few simple disciplines. And remember what I've said for years, a few simple disciplines practiced every day can change your entire destiny. A Jim Rohn morning, as I like to call it, rests on 4 cornerstones. Picture them like the 4 legs of a sturdy table. If one leg is missing, the table wobbles. But if all 4 are strong, you can build anything on top of it: your goals, your business, your relationships, your dreams. So let's go through each one. 1. Quiet reflection, meeting yourself before the world meets you. The first cornerstone is a moment of quiet reflection. Just a few minutes. No phone, no noise, no hurry. Because before you face the world, you ought to meet yourself. You ought to ask, how am I doing? What am I becoming? What do I intend today to stand for? And you don't need an hour for this. Just long enough to clear the dust from your mind and let your intentions rise to the surface. Think of it as tuning the instrument before playing the music. Life plays better when you begin in tune. 2. Self-education, feeding the mind before the world feeds you noise. The second cornerstone is self-education. 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes of reading something that builds you, builds your philosophy, your skills, your understanding. Because the world will give you plenty of information, but very little wisdom. The morning is your chance to choose what enters your mind before the world chooses for you. I've always said, formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune. And a fortune is not just money, it's wisdom, confidence, clarity, all the treasures of the mind. 1 page a day is enough to start. Over time, those pages turn into chapters, and those chapters turn into insight. 3. Written goals and daily plans, putting your future on paper. The third cornerstone is writing. Not long essays, just a few lines. Your goals, your disciplines, your plan for the day. Because if you don't put your future on paper, you risk leaving it to accident, and life is too important to run on accident. Your pen is your steering wheel. When you write, here is what matters today, you tell the day what it must allow. When you write your goals, you remind your mind where you are heading. And when you look back months later, you'll see something remarkable. Your handwriting becomes the blueprint of your transformation. 4. Physical movement, waking up the body that carries the mind. The fourth cornerstone is movement. A stretch, a walk, a bit of breathing, anything to wake up the body gently. You don't need to become a champion athlete. Just become someone who moves each morning. Because motion creates emotion. If the body wakes up strong, the mind follows close behind. The body and mind are partners in your success. Treat them both well, move them both daily. Put these 4 together, reflect, read, write, move, and you have the foundation of a morning that can change your life. Not someday, not eventually, but as soon as you begin applying it. Now, with the cornerstones in place, let's talk about how to turn this into a powerful 30-day challenge, why 30 days matters, and why simplicity makes all the difference. Now let's talk about this idea of a 30-day challenge. Why 30? Why not 3? Why not 300? There's a reason, an important one. 30 days is long enough to create change, yet short enough that your mind won't panic and say, this is impossible. The mind can endure almost anything when it knows the finish line. But when the finish line is unclear, discipline becomes difficult. So 30 days gives us the best of both worlds, a long enough runway for transformation and a short enough window for commitment. You see, anyone can be disciplined for a day. Anyone can get excited for a weekend. And anyone can be inspired for a moment. But the real magic, the real miracle happens when you do the right thing long enough for the right thing to start doing something to you. That's what 30 days is for. It's long enough for the morning routine to stop being something you're trying and start being something you're becoming. And remember this simple truth. People don't quit because the goal is too big. People quit because the steps are too complicated. That's why our morning routine stays simple. Just 4 pieces. Reflect, read, write, move. If the routine grows too large, you won't follow it. But if it stays simple, your mind can't argue with it. And if your mind can't argue, you'll win. And here's something else to consider. The results you want won't show up on day 3. They won't even show up on day 7. No. They begin to whisper around day 15, and they begin to shout around day 30. That's how consistency works. It hides its rewards. It holds them back. It waits. It waits to see if you're serious. And when you prove that you are, through repetition, through discipline, through those quiet early hours, it begins opening doors you didn't even know were locked. So let's build this 30-day journey deliberately. Not as a sprint, because a sprint ends quickly. And not as a punishment, because punishment drains energy. But as an agreement, a promise you make to yourself. For the next 30 mornings, I will take charge. I will design my day before the world tries to design it for me. You'll discover something fascinating about simplicity. It gives you power. When your routine is simple, you can't hide from it. And when you can't hide from it, you grow. And when you grow, your results grow with you. So this is the plan. For 30 days, we follow the foundation, not perfectly, not heroically, just faithfully. And if you do that, I promise you won't recognize yourself on day 30. Now that the challenge is set, let's walk through it 1 week at a time. Let's begin with what happens in those first 7 days. The adjustment, the resistance, and the small wins that begin waking you up to your own potential. Now let's talk about the first 7 days, the opening week of this journey. This is what I call the week of awakening. And let me tell you, it's not the week when you feel powerful. It's the week when you feel everything. The excitement, the resistance, the argument between who you've been and who you're becoming, and both sides want to win. On day 1, you'll wake up a little earlier, sit quietly for a moment, open a book, write a few lines, stretch a little, and something wonderful will happen. You'll feel proud. You'll say, I did it. And that feeling is important. Remember it. But also remember this. The real test isn't day 1. Day 1 is easy. It's new. It's fresh. It's exciting. The real test is day 2, day 3, day 4, the days when the excitement wears off and the discipline must take over. Let me warn you, your old habits will not surrender peacefully. They will say, why get up early? Why reflect? Why write? Why move? And they'll offer you comfort in exchange for your future. But comfort is the thief of potential. Comfort will rob you of the man or woman you could become. So in week 1, your job is not to feel amazing. Your job is to show up, even tired, even unsure, even imperfectly. Now here's the key idea for week 1. Completion, not perfection. Don't worry about how beautiful your journal looks. Don't worry if your reading is slow. Don't worry if your reflection is messy. Just do it. Let consistency be the victory. Because discipline grows through repetition, not excellence. In fact, during this first week, your success can be measured with a very simple checklist, what I like to call the Rohn morning scorecard. 4 questions. Did I sit for a moment of quiet? Did I read something useful? Did I write something important? Did I move my body? 4 questions. 4 simple disciplines. And if you can say yes to those 4 each morning, even clumsily, even sleepily, you've won the day. And anyone who can win a day can win a week. And anyone who wins a week begins to awaken to something powerful, their own potential. You'll notice something else in week 1, something subtle but significant. You'll start to trust yourself a little more. Not because you accomplished something grand, but because you kept a small promise. And small promises kept lead to big confidence earned. So the goal of week 1 is simple. Awaken the discipline. Don't aim to change your life this week. Aim to change your morning. And if you can change your morning for 7 straight days, you have begun something extraordinary. Now, once we move beyond these first 7 days, once the initial resistance starts to fade, something remarkable starts to happen. You begin entering the second week, the week of momentum, where the discipline becomes easier and the rewards begin to show. Now let's move into week 2, the week of momentum. This is where the magic begins. Not the fireworks, not the grand achievements, but the quiet momentum that starts building underneath your feet. And momentum, my friends, is one of the most powerful forces in the world. It can make the difficult feel easy, the heavy feel lighter, and the impossible begin to look reasonable. But let me tell you something important. Momentum doesn't show up on day 1. It doesn't even show up on day 3. Momentum shows up when you give your disciplines enough time to introduce themselves. And around days 8 through 14, you start hearing a little knock at the door. It's momentum saying, keep going. I'm ready to help. In week 2, you'll notice something interesting. You don't fight yourself as much. The argument between the old you and the new you begins to soften. The old habits still whisper, but they don't roar. And the new habits, they begin to feel familiar, comfortable, almost natural. And that's when you know you're on the right path. Let me give you one of the great philosophies of discipline. Small disciplines multiply, just like small errors multiply. One small discipline repeated daily becomes strength. One small neglect repeated daily becomes weakness. And here in week 2, you start to feel which direction you're heading. The steps are still small, but the feeling is different. You're no longer only doing the routine. Now the routine is starting to do something to you. This week, we make a slight expansion to the morning. Not a complicated one. Just enough to deepen the roots. Read a little longer, maybe 15 or 20 minutes. Write one clear priority for the day, something that truly matters. Record one insight from your reading, something that made you think, and continue your quiet reflection and physical movement. Why these additions? Because week 2 is where you begin to see, not just feel, the benefits of your new habits. You read more, so you think better. You write more, so you act with greater clarity. You reflect more, so you respond instead of react. And you move more, so you carry energy instead of fatigue. In week 2, something else happens too, something subtle but profound. You start to build what I call the law of satisfaction. The law says this: when you do what you said you would do, you gain respect for yourself. And let me tell you, once you gain respect for yourself, you don't want to lose it. Self-respect becomes the fuel for consistency. So what's the real goal of week 2? It's simple. Let the small disciplines begin compounding. Because here's the truth, no one becomes disciplined suddenly. No one becomes successful suddenly. No one becomes wise suddenly. But through small steps repeated daily, your life begins to take on a new shape. By the end of week 2, you'll feel a shift. You'll feel a little more capable, a little more focused, a little more proud, not because the world changed, but because you changed. And once you feel that shift, once momentum begins working at your side instead of against you, you are officially on your way. Now, if you think week 2 is powerful, wait until week 3. Week 3 is the breakthrough, the moment when you stop doing the routine and the routine begins transforming you. Now let's talk about week 3, the breakthrough week. And believe me, if you've reached this far, you've already done something extraordinary. Most people never get past week 1. A few make it to week 2. But week 3, this is where the transformation begins. This is where the routine stops being something you force and starts becoming something you are. Around day 15, something remarkable happens. The argument in your mind, the one that says, stay in bed, skip the reading, forget the journal, that argument grows quiet. In fact, it stops sounding like a debate and starts sounding like background noise. And when the old voice of habit becomes background noise, you know the new identity is winning. See, one of the greatest moments in personal development is when discipline becomes normal. Not heroic, not dramatic, just normal. Because once something becomes normal, it becomes effortless. And once it's effortless, it becomes who you are. Think about that. You didn't force the routine. You allowed it to settle into your identity. That's what week 3 is all about. The identity shift. In week 3, you begin to say things like, this is what I do in the morning. Not this is what I'm trying. Not this is my challenge. No, this is my routine. And the day begins to expect something from you. Your mind begins to expect clarity. Your spirit begins to expect quiet. Your goals begin to expect attention. And your body begins to expect movement. You and your morning become partners in possibility. In this third week, we expand the practice just a little further. Nothing overwhelming, just enough to deepen the transformation. Review your monthly, quarterly, or yearly goals. Ask yourself one powerful question each morning. Is who I'm becoming aligned with what I want? Identify one habit that no longer serves you and begin removing it. Add one line of gratitude each day to your journal. Why gratitude? Because gratitude sharpens perspective. It lifts the mind. It turns what you have into enough and what you aspire to become into something meaningful. Gratitude is the great equalizer of discouragement. Now, let me give you one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned about breakthroughs. You're not rewarded on day 1 for starting. You're rewarded around day 20 for staying. The results don't show up in the beginning. They show up in the middle. They show up when most people give up. And that's why breakthroughs feel so good, because you know you overcame what the average person wouldn't. In week 3, you'll also begin to see something astonishing. You're thinking differently. You're responding differently. You're expecting differently. That is the nature of becoming. As I've always said, success is something you attract by the person you become. And in week 3, you begin becoming that person quietly, deliberately, and consistently. This is the week when you realize you're not forcing change, you're living it, and that's when life begins to turn in your favor. But we're not done yet. Because if week 3 is the breakthrough, week 4 is the transformation. The moment when the new version of you takes the lead, and the old version of you simply can't keep up. Now we arrive at week 4, the final stretch of this 30-day journey. And let me tell you, this is not just another week. No, this is the week of transformation. The week where the person you've been becoming finally steps forward. The week where what once felt difficult now feels natural. And what once felt unnatural now feels necessary. By the time you reach day 22, something beautiful begins to happen. You stop counting the days. You stop measuring the routine. You stop wondering if it's working. Because now the routine isn't just a task, it's a part of your identity. It's something you do because it's something you are. And that, my friends, is the greatest shift of all. In this final week, you'll feel different, not in a dramatic New Year resolution kind of way, but in a quieter, deeper way. You'll notice you're calmer in the morning, clearer in your decisions, more grounded in your attitude. Why? Because you've given yourself 30 mornings of direction, 30 mornings of clarity, 30 mornings of discipline, and the world can't take that away from you. Let me tell you the truth about transformation. It doesn't arrive with trumpets. It arrives with subtlety. It's in the way you speak. It's in the way you carry yourself. It's in the way you handle interruptions, problems, opportunities. Transformation shows up first in your attitude long before it shows up in your results. Now, what happens during this final week? Quite a lot. First, you begin to recognize something powerful. The new habits are easier than the old ones. You used to battle the morning. Now the morning welcomes you. You used to dread the quiet. Now you crave it. You used to question your goals. Now you consult them. You've gone from forcing discipline to living discipline, and that is the mark of transformation. Second, this is the week you fine-tune your routine. You identify the parts that serve you best. Maybe it's the reading. Maybe it's the journaling. Maybe it's that 3-minute reflection that clears out yesterday and makes room for today. You refine the routine not by adding more, but by strengthening what matters most. Third, this is the week you begin practicing what I call the future formula. Keep what worked. If something became a strength, stay with it. Improve what can grow. If something is helping, make it even better. Remove what no longer serves you. If something distracts, weakens, or steals your time, let it go. This formula allows you to take what you've built in 30 days and stretch it into 30 weeks, 30 months, maybe even 30 years. Because the goal is not just to change a month. The goal is to change a life. But here's the best part of week 4. You begin to see glimpses of the person you're becoming. Not the person you were trying to be, not the person you wished you were, but the person you're actually becoming. The person who wakes with intention, the person who reads with purpose, the person who writes with clarity, the person who moves with energy, the person who starts the day instead of letting the day start them. And once you've lived that way for 30 mornings, you don't want to go back. Not because the old life was terrible, but because the new life is so much better. Week 4 is the reward. But more importantly, week 4 is the beginning. Because if you can transform 30 mornings, you can transform anything. Your health, your relationships, your money, your habits, your attitude, your entire philosophy of life. Week 4 whispers something extraordinary. This is who you can be if you choose to continue. And that's the real transformation, not the routine itself, but the person you become through it. Now, all that's left is to bring this journey to a close. Not an ending, but a new beginning. Let's talk about the life that awaits you after these 30 days. And now, here we are, the end of the 30-day journey, or what most people would call the end. But you and I know better. This isn't the end. This is the beginning of a whole new chapter in your life. Because once you've lived with discipline for 30 mornings, once you've taken charge of your day before the world ever had a chance to negotiate with you well, you've proven something extraordinary. You have the power to design your life. Let's take a moment to reflect on what you've just done. For 30 mornings, you chose to rise with intention. For 30 mornings, you fed your mind before the world fed you noise. For 30 mornings, you put your future on paper instead of leaving it to chance. For 30 mornings, you moved your body, cleared your thoughts, and set your direction. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how many people wake up every day by accident? But not you. Not anymore. See, here's the real reward. Not the routine itself, but the person you've become because of it. The discipline you practiced has turned into self-respect. The clarity you gained has turned into confidence. The consistency you built has turned into momentum. And momentum, once it's on your side, is a very difficult thing to stop. Let me give you one of the great conclusions of life. Every new life begins with a new morning. Not a new year, not a new job, not a new relationship. A new morning, and you've just lived through 30 of them. 30 opportunities to rise a little higher. 30 chances to grow a little wiser. 30 days of writing the next chapter of your story, not in the loud moments, but in the quiet ones. Not in the applause, but in the preparation. Now, as you step forward from here, let me encourage you, don't stop. Don't let this be a 30-day miracle with a 31-day disappearance. Let this be the beginning of a lifestyle. Let this be the moment you say, I don't just live my life, I design it. Because life responds to design. Life rewards intention. Life pays extraordinary dividends to the man or woman who takes the time to guide their own day. So keep the routine, keep the discipline, keep the clarity, keep the small steps that make a big difference. And above all, keep the promise you've now proven you can make to yourself. Let me leave you with this idea. Success whispers before it ever roars. For 30 days, your whispers were powerful, quiet, consistent, steady. And if you keep going, those whispers will become actions, those actions will become habits, those habits will become character, and that character will create a life far beyond anything you've imagined. A designed life, a disciplined life, a purposeful life, a life that started with 30 simple mornings. I wish for you wisdom, I wish for you discipline, and I wish for you a future built not by accident, but by intention. And from this moment forward, every morning can be the morning that changes everything if you choose it.